me tonight are members of our team, all of whom normally work in other city departments and are on assignment to the Emergency Operations Center, to our fiscal and grant making team through the end of the year. So some quick introductions. Emily Sevier and Miranda Burciaga are leading this grants program, and Patrick Cordova and Clarissa Garcia will be helping support the grant making effort. I really want to apologize that this is on short notice. We do have a huge challenge in front of us. The City Council approved our program on September 22nd, including more than an additional $1 million for nonprofit funding. And as you'll hear from Miranda shortly, we need to ensure the funds are spent by December 30th of this year. That's right, spent by December 30th. The good news is the funds can be retroactive to March. We're hoping that we can make this grant application process as easy as possible for all of you. So we're going to make things minimal at the front end, as you'll see from the presentation, and then work with you through the process for documentation and so forth. We had really hoped that the good folks in Washington, D.C. would give us an extension on that December 30th deadline and maybe help out our residents who are hurting with a little more funding. But as of this week, I'm not feeling terribly optimistic about that. So that means we've got a tight timeline, and that isn't optimal for you or for us, quite frankly. But we also know how much this pandemic has hurt your organizations and the clients you serve, particularly those residents who are being disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and the recession. For this reason, we're focusing this grant application on the people and places who've been disproportionately harmed by illness and loss of loved ones, by unemployment and loss of work hours. We're focusing on the services they need right now, like case management, legal assistance, mental health, healthcare, childcare, and getting the information they need to stay safe and healthy. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Miranda Burciaga, who will run through the details of the grant program. If you've got questions along the way, you can type them in the chat and we'll try to answer them. The staff team will try to do that, or save your questions verbally until the Q&A at the end. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Miranda to present the sort of who, what, and where of our grants program. Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you, Michelle. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our grant program information session. Before we begin this session, I would like to go over some housekeeping items. Today's session will be recorded, so please keep yourself muted if you are not talking during the session. If you have questions, you can use the raise hand option or the chat box. We are monitoring the chat box, and I will pause between sections to answer questions. At the end of the presentation, we will have more time to go over questions as well. With that being said, we started recording and we will kick off today's session. Agenda. Today's agenda, I will go over the timeline of the application process, discuss the purpose of this grant, review the eligibility criteria, application information, and terms of the grant agreement. At the end, we will wrap up the session with some time for questions and answers. Timeline. The timeline for this grant is an expedited process. The applications opened yesterday, Wednesday, October 7th, and they are due next Thursday, October 15th. The status of the awards will be released on Friday, October 30th, and applicants that are approved for the award will receive funds in November from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation on behalf of the City of San Jose. Purpose. The purpose of this grant is to provide $3.3 million in relief funding to nonprofit organizations that serve San Jose communities that have been negatively and disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The CARES Act requires all expenditures related to this public health emergency be incurred between March 1st through December 30th, 2020. Grant request amount. This award will range from $5,000 to $150,000. Applicants that request more than $50,000 will be required by the federal government to provide a DUNS number and may be required to provide additional report documentation to the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. We hope to fund your agency at the full requested amount, but if the requested amounts exceed the grant award, partial awards may be granted. Do you guys have any questions about the timeline, purpose, or amount available so far? Okay, keep going. Eligibility criteria. To be considered an eligible applicant, agencies must fit these qualifications. 1, be a nonprofit agency with a current 501c3 status or a grassroots community organization under the fiscal agency of a 501c3 nonprofit. Serve San Jose communities in one of our identified zip codes or community populations that have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And they must have expenses in one or more of the eligible program categories that we'll discuss today. These expenses can be personal or non-personal related. If your agency meets these criteria, then you will be considered an eligible applicant for funding. Eligible geography or community. For this program, we will use a racial equity lens with priority given to agencies that serve one of the following 6 zip codes that have had the highest rates of COVID-19 or pandemic-related job loss. You can also qualify if your agency serves one of these impacted populations, such as residents over the age of 65, persons with disabilities, Black or Latino residents, those who were previously incarcerated and released due to the pandemic, and low-wage essential workers who may be ineligible for government assistance. Eligible programs. The programs listed here are eligible to be funded under personal services. Some examples of eligible programs include outreach, education, and empowerment that can be tied to COVID-19, such as business associations providing guidance on COVID-19 health orders, outreach to inform community members of health services, outreach campaigns for essential workers in long-term care facilities, or trainings for personnel on proper health protocols or county health guidelines. Case management services can include a case manager providing employment counseling to workers laid off due to COVID-19. And we will also fund health and mental health services. We want to support your agencies in helping residents access healthcare services. It may be funding for staffing a crisis hotline or staff to provide counseling on healthy habits for dealing with stress. Legal assistance. This can be for helping residents at risk of displacement due to COVID-19 or helping residents complete paperwork to prevent eviction. Childcare can be considered funding for transition of services to learning pods, distance learning, or childcare services for children of low-wage and essential workers. And Michelle, do you want to add anything about some examples of eligible programs?
Yeah, so really, if your organization isn't providing these programs, then you have to kind of meet the criteria of geography or population and one of these programs. And if you provide one of these types of programs, and they're fairly broad categories, but if you provide, this is your day-to-day work that you do, and you're serving, then you will be eligible for the grant application process. And so an example would be, and we know a lot of you have pivoted, and your work, your day-to-day work has sort of shifted since March to all COVID all the time. And that may be the link. So for example, if you are a mental health provider in the 95112 zip code, and you're serving clients, or you have client base in that zip code, and you're a nonprofit organization and you've seen a lot of increase in need since the pandemic, then that would be something we would be able to fund. So I think as we go on to the next two slides, I can give you some additional examples. Legal assistance, for example, if you're doing a lot of assistance for families, you're normally a legal assistance agency, and you have a lot of families you're helping who have been laid off and are at risk of displacement. That would be something. They do not need to be new programs since COVID. It can be your existing programs, but the clients that you are serving are impacted by population. So we will definitely look at existing programs. So let's go on to the next slide, and then we'll try to talk a little bit more about this as we go along.
Okay. Let's see. So eligible expenses. Organizations providing the programs on the previous slide are also eligible for non-personal expenses to ensure continuity of those services to impacted populations. Community outreach may include the cost of Facebook ads, print materials, signs to promote services, or public safety information. It also covers rental relief to keep your doors open so that you can continue to provide services to the community members. Your agency may have had unexpected technology or infrastructure costs to purchase laptops, so employees can work remotely to provide online counseling or distance learning, and this grant will help cover that. Or maybe your agency has had to upgrade infrastructure to comply with new health orders, such as installing plexiglass shields to protect employees or clients. Purchase touchless hand washing stations, hand sanitizer stands, face masks, disinfectant wipes, and contact payment equipment, to name a few. These funds may be used to fill shortfalls in revenue, and they can be allocated to cover personal services. If they are serving residents impacted by COVID-19 or the pandemic-induced recession. So you can either serve one of the 6 zip codes or one of the identified populations that we listed before. Ineligible expenses. Ineligible expenses include expenses incurred not in direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic or are recession related, costs prior to March 1st or after December 30th, and programs that service residents outside of San Jose. Those would not be considered eligible expenses. This grant is targeted to support our community here in San Jose. I also want to caution agencies to not submit any requests for reimbursement that can be considered a duplication of benefits, such as expenses already funded through another federally funded program. For example, if an agency already receives funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, they would not be eligible for funding that covers the same personal service expense. Application components. All applications must be submitted through web grants. The application form includes an application signature, nonprofit application form, and conflict of interest section. The nonprofit application form has questions regarding the amount in the funding request, services provided, organization's mission, and a breakdown of expense budget. We designed the application to be easy to complete, but the budget does take time to review. At this time, we are not requiring documentation, but organizations should be prepared to provide it if requested. But it will not be requested in the application. Project budget. So this slide shows a snapshot of the project budget template. All applications will need to submit a project budget that can be found in the web grants attachment section. Please remember to click save and upload this after your file is completed. The project budget includes an area to describe the expense the grant will be used for, indication if the expense has been incurred or is projected, and the total project expense. Application submission. All applications must be submitted through web grants by 5 p.m. on Thursday, October 15th. Applications cannot be submitted through a hard copy, fax, or email, and late applications will not be accepted. So this is a fast turnaround time, so please take the time to review the application, and we're here to help you as well. Grant review priorities. During the grant review process, city staff will review all applications and requested expenses for eligibility. Review will be based on the applicant's ability to deliver services between March 1st through December 30th. If demand exceeds funding available, it may not be possible to fund all eligible applications or to fund applications at the full amount requested. If this does happen, the review process will give priority funding to organizations serving both the most impacted zip codes and underserved populations that we've listed. We may also review how an organization's mission aligns with the city's community and economic recovery efforts to serve those that are in most need. Terms of the grant agreement. All services must be completed by December 30th, 2020. The terms of the grant agreement includes a service period for expenses that can date back to March 1st through December 30th, 2020. If funds are not used by the end of December, they will need to be returned to the city. I'd also like to highlight again that the grant money will be dispersed through the Silicon Valley Community Foundation on behalf of the City of San Jose. Resources. Now, if you have any questions throughout the application process, please visit our City of San Jose webpage that has information about this grant program. You can head over to sanjoseca.gov, click on the Help for Nonprofit box in the right corner, and it'll take you to our resource page. Under the San Jose Coronavirus Relief Fund's Nonprofit Grant Program, you'll find the application guidelines, FAQs, and an application, our application web grants portal that is listed. If you are new to registering with web grants, please take time to register in advance, as there is an approval process before applicants can gain access to the site. Does anyone have any questions about how to gain access to the site or find the information? Okay. So thank you for your time and being with us here today. I'll open up this session to discuss any questions you may have about the application process or guidelines. Feel free to type them in the chat, raise your hand, or unmute yourself.
So we've been getting a ton of questions in the chat. So I think we'll take a second to answer just for the group. If you've not been following along, we've got a few people along, for the, with some questions. And then if you want to raise your hand, you click on the participant button and you can find your name and raise your hand. So, so a couple of questions that I think are some really basic ones. Miranda mentioned around duplication of funds. So if your agency received a Paycheck Protection Program and it paid for example, for staff salaries, but those funds ran out in September, we might be able to fund staff salaries for October, November, December if it's an eligible program. We've got some questions about, so that's the real, but if you got Paycheck Protection funding, we can't double pay. So if you got some kind of federal assistance, if you got CRF funding from the county, you can't double dip with these federal funds. That's kind of the way the rules are. Miranda, can you go, or Emily, can you go back? Somebody missed the slide with the zip codes and the demographics. So if we could go back to that slide, that would be great. And then and maybe we can just leave that up for a second. And
yes, yeah.
So these, these are specific neighborhoods that are really highly impacted by COVID, and these are populations that are highly impacted by COVID in San Jose. It is an or, not an and. So It's either a zip code or a population. We will prioritize agencies that are serving, you know, a zip code and a population. So that's important to note. I'm seeing a ton of, no, so the budget, it does say rental, mortgage, and utility relief. That is for you. If you are providing case management and you want to provide rental, mortgage, or utility relief to your clients, that's eligible with CRF funding. But honestly, we have already allocated about $15 million of resources from the CRF funds the city got to direct relief to residents. We've got additional money. So our entire $30 million budget is doing rental relief. It's doing small business rental relief, utility relief. And we understand, and honestly, for some of you, the easiest expense to pay, if you haven't been able to pay your agency's rent due to declining revenues from the pandemic-induced recession, that may be the easiest. I've got a question here. What about homeless populations? We did not fund, we've got a separate bucket of funding for homeless populations through the CRF, and our housing department is running those funds. So we really focused on populations that are not being funded through other city resources. That doesn't mean if your agency is providing one of these eligible programs, such as case management or legal services to homeless populations, that we wouldn't serve them, because many of your clients probably would fit one of these others. Okay, so I'm trying to catch up with some of these. All right. So we are going to, how will population be served, be proved for the application? So self-reporting will be required, and we'll ask you for some documentation of that along the way. You can access us during office hours at the email, and there is a phone number on the grant as well. I will be honest and let you all know my normal city office phone is forwarded to my cell phone while I'm working from home. So you guys are always welcome to call me at 408-535-8254. I may have one of the staff members respond, but you can find me. I'm probably one of the easier people to find in the city. This is not the same CARES grant that was due a week ago. That was the arts program. So it was the counterpart to this, that our Office of Cultural Affairs ran an arts relief program. So arts programs are not eligible for our grant program. Can agencies receive reimbursement for internet phone expenses for employees working remotely from home? Yes, if you've pivoted to paying your employees or you had to buy them all laptops, those are hard costs that we can pay for. Okay. I'm not sure about the question on office hours. If we are going to have office hours, and it will be a Zoom format, and you can sign up by emailing us. We'll give you an appointment, and then we'll do Zoom office hours. Okay, somebody says we're already receiving funds from BEST. So that's another important thing, is that if you have city funds or county funds for the program, this is not to replace those existing funding sources. This is if you don't have a funding source there. If you're doing distance learning and childcare, we'd really need to talk. I mean, we're looking at learning pods, and we're looking at childcare. We will consider virtual services, but we need to make the case how those services are being provided in a way that's digitally inclusive. to families that have issues with digital inclusion. Okay, let's see. What if the agency staff is on furlough 1 day a week? So if you're wanting to bring those furloughed staffers back, say for October, November, December, that would be an eligible expense. And we would be, that would be eligible. Receipts for rental or mortgage payments, we would want to see a copy of your lease. And we could even pay your landlord directly. That would be an option. Duplicate recipients, you mean, so like if somebody's going to agency A and also going to agency B, and they're getting counseling at agency A and they're getting, you know, another service for their family, or maybe they're getting counseling from 2 agencies, we're not going to double check that. We're just going to assume that the client had need from both of your agencies. There is some duplication work that's happening with our, you know, to ensure not duplicating, say, with our rental relief programs. But again, this is really more about the services or the needs that you have. Technology infrastructure, would HVAC system improvements at a health center be eligible? I'm going to say maybe, if we could make the case that you needed to make improvements to ensure that the air was safe and clean due to the COVID pandemic. So that would be another. I'm going to put my phone number in the chat. Somebody just asked for it. Yes, if you need laptops for folks, that's an eligible for staff. We will fund in-person learning pods. We are actually using coronavirus relief funds to pay for the scholarships for the city-run programs. So for FTEs, we'd want some sort of payroll receipts or something. So let's talk, I'll talk a little bit about the duplicate funding. So let's say that your agency has been getting city and county funding for your programs, but you've had an increased demand in service due to COVID-19, and you brought on some temporary help. So we could pay for that expanded service, and that wouldn't be duplicating our existing city grant program. Another example would be you're getting city or county funding and you lost a big donor because they decided, you know, and you were counting on them, but that big donor decided that they were going to fund another need due to coronavirus. Or maybe your big donor like lost a lot of money in the stock market or something and walked away. And so you could, you know, that need to keep your services afloat is not duplicating your existing city grant. So that's really what we mean, is it just can't duplicate. So again, there's a question here about API communities not being included in the eligible demographic. This fund is tied to, so if an API community lives in the zip codes that we're more than happy to do that. But citywide, the API community has not been disproportionately impacted by COVID the way the Black and Latinx communities have. So this is really, because these are coronavirus relief funds, we very clearly have to show the federal government that we are spending this money in a manner that's tied to the pandemic. And so we looked at who is being most harmed by the pandemic and the pandemic-induced recession. So that's it. That's really where this came about. And we took these priorities to council, and this is what they approved. Yeah, so API community may be highly represented in health services affected by COVID. That is absolutely true. We just saw some reporting on Filipino nurses, for example, and healthcare workers. So I think, again, if you can show that you're, for example, I would make the case that those healthcare workers are essential workers that are covered, you know, that they would fall in that essential worker category. Okay, does rent coverage in only the zip codes listed count? So we're really talking about rent for you, the nonprofit. So you'd really need to show us, if you're outside one of those zip codes, how you are serving the geography or the population. So if you're new to web grants, we can give you some technical assistance on web grants. That's and we'll line you up with our staff to do that. So I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm just seeing a lot of questions in there. So arts and cultural nonprofits. Emily, do you want to answer how we determine that? Since Emily's day job is with our Office of Cultural Affairs.
Yeah, so just in terms of what the funding was for the arts and culture grants, and a lot of that too, it's a sort of a different category of what we're looking at in terms of funding. And so that those grants were just released or just closed up last week. And that's really looking at economic loss that arts nonprofits had due to COVID. So.
Okay, yeah, so arts organizations had a much different grants process for them because of the way the coronavirus relief funds are structured. So somebody asked a very good question about this being funded on a first come, first served basis. No, if you apply, I would encourage you to apply early to make sure that you get your, but it's going to take you a little time to put your budget together or figure this out. If you want to ask some questions one-on-one, that would be, you know, you want to make sure that you do your due diligence. We're trying to make it an easy application, but no, if you turn there's no difference in if you go do your application tonight or if you do it the day of the deadline. We're going to look at them all once the applications close. Okay, I see Anne Ferguson has her hand raised. So Anne, would you like to unmute yourself? Okay. And you may ask your question.
Thank you. So I was looking at the budget template, and under rental, mortgage, and utility payment relief, the example was rent for one family for 3 months. So it wasn't clear to me whether those expenses were supposed to be for the clients or for the nonprofit.
That's not Emily, Miranda, is that?
I don't think that was the example given, but I'll have to look.
Yeah, I mean, I literally looked at the budget, so it might have been a mistake, but I just wanted to clarify because there's two different things. Right.
Yeah, no, we are happy to provide rental relief for the nonprofit agency, and we will take another look at the budget template and make sure. We have lots of programs doing rental relief for clients, and in partnership with Destination Home, Sacred Heart, Catholic Charities. So, so if you're already if your agency's part of that Destination Home larger network, your clients are going those directions, that's really where the coronavirus relief funds for rental relief are going. And this is really, I would really, given the documentation requirements, if you're not already participating in one of the rental relief programs, unless you really want to bring a lot of headache on your agency, I would, talk to me about it if you want to do rental relief, because for your clients. If you need rental relief as an organization, that's really what this grant would be for.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to clarify because it said that it was more for the client, so I just want to make sure we can apply for our own utility relief. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So if you had to hire additional staff to meet the counseling needs of new clients, are you eligible even if you got PPP funding? So if you didn't pay for that expanded staffing with your PPP funding, yes. If you did pay for it with your PPP, then no. But if your PPP has run out and expired at the end of this month or last month, we can fund that staffing in the upcoming months. So we wouldn't be able to go retroactive. So our medical and dental insurance expenses eligible. Yes, we will fund if you're talking about for your staff and paying those personal services, it would be that individual's full cost. It would be the payroll, the benefits, etc. Okay. Is there a way to see the questions that are in the grant information section of web grants? We can, so if people post questions in web grants, we can update. There's an FAQ, frequently asked questions sheet that we will, that's on the city website. And we will take some of these and we'll go from there. Okay, I have a question for from Linda about, is hazard pay eligible for frontline workers? So is this like workers in your agency? Linda, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi there, yes. So we're preparing to provide transportation services in South County. And we wanted to be able to—
South County's not eligible. This is for San Jose.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, but we would certainly, if you were planning to, I would have to look at the Coronavirus Relief Fund guidelines, and we'd have to determine if it is eligible to do hazard pay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can you give other examples of items similar to Facebook ads that may be eligible? So if you're doing an outreach and education campaign targeted to residents of San Jose around, whether it's wearing a mask or being safe or, getting tested, or that there's resources tied to the pandemic recession. You might, maybe you're buying bus shelter ads, maybe you're doing phone banking. Those would be the types of outreach and education items. Maybe you're putting up a new website. So hopefully that answers that. Okay, so Tree had another question here. I hope I pronounced your name properly. How an organization is determined to be an arts and culture. So we do cultural programs, but we also do workers' rights, ethnic media outreach, community assistance. I think you put on the hat that best fits the grant application that you're wearing, and we would have to determine if it met the criteria. But I guess it could be, that could fall within outreach and education. I could see where an arts and cultural organization might be doing outreach and education.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to chime in on that. I think, just what we were trying to make the distinction is just the grants that were offered. We're just trying to make sure we're providing services to many people as possible. So since we already provided a program for the grants program, we're trying to make a distinction between the two.
Okay. Okay, Carol says she's raised her hand. I'm sorry that it wasn't showing up in my participant list. Carol Bean, if you would like to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm with Bay Area Tutoring Association, and we have a program that we're starting, COVID-19 Black Lives Matter, which is going to serve students of African ancestry whose parents are essential workers, which sounds like it really covers where you are in terms of this grant, but it is currently intended to be online and not in person. So we could look at technological support for those students, but would the other aspects of the program be covered as well?
Well, you'd really have to document that these students that are going to get assistance are in San Jose. And this would be the case where, because coronavirus relief funds, we've learned, have to be spent in the city that they're, you know, so it would be, you know, if it would be really, if you're doing a program that's Bay Area wide or larger, and
no, this is Santa Clara County, but obviously we would be tracking where students were from, and some of them will be from San Jose, obviously.
Yeah, so we would have to like only pay a percentage of the staff person's time based on how many folks are in San Jose. Yeah, and we'd really have to make sure they are in, that we were serving San Jose, and so it could be tricky. But again, it would definitely meet the population and so forth.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a question about the authorized signature and financial dashboard. Emily, do you want to answer that related to web grants?
Yeah, so the authorized signature, I mean, that's basically authorized. It's one of the first components that you fill out, and that's basically saying that everything is true. And so, and then so the other components of the application, it's pretty much the standard web grants application, and then there's the specific questions to this grant, which would then be uploading the budget template and the specific questions regarding this grant.
Yeah, so we can post what the grant application questions are, so you don't have to go into web grants to see what they are in advance. We will do that and make sure that there's a document available so people can see that and start. You can even start to plan your application or see if that would work.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, and they are fairly straightforward questions. It's essentially, you know, are you serving these zip codes? Are you serving these populations? You know, what have your expenses been in relation to those?
Okay. Let's see what else we've got. So personnel costs, you can definitely include an allocation for overhead admin management. So yeah, that would be fine. You know, somebody has to manage the staff that's doing the direct work. Okay, so fresh produce to low-income families in the county, rental relief for cold storage. I think that would be eligible, but again, it's got to be it's got to be you know, if you're doing a countywide program, it's gonna have to be how much is tied to this. And oh, guess what? I don't want to out her because she's but the person who is our city expert on coronavirus relief funds just sent me a message and said, yes, hazard pay is an eligible expense. So frontline workers, Yes, so that can be part of your grant application. All right, so Miranda has graciously offered to share the actual grant application form with everyone. So we'll take a pause on the questions here so you guys can see the grant application form.
All right, and I will stop sharing here.
And I just want to say, while we're getting this next one up, thank you all. I mean, this has been an amazing, amazingly quick process to get this program up and running. And so you're really helping us ensure that we can do the best we can with all of these great questions.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and you guys can see my screen. This is the Web Grants application portal. So you'll hit the general information, or I'll start from the beginning actually. When you first sign into Web Grants, there will be a portal that says funding opportunities. You'll click on funding opportunities first and find the San Jose Coronavirus Relief Fund's nonprofit grant program. After you've clicked on that program, you will find the application forms. So over to your left side, you'll start with the general information, which I have already filled out. I'll open it up again. To type in your primary contact number, primary contact name, your project title. So I'll put youth programs, learning. An authorized official that's a part of your organization, and your organization's name. So there'll be a list of organization's name of the organization that you're tied to from your web grant. I'm going to click on save. Go to application forms and go to application signature. You'll click on edit, prepared by, your name and title. Click on application signature, signature date. So this is a really friendly application portal. Go back to application forms, and now we'll look at the application, the main application form. So in here, some questions that it asks is the fiscal sponsor information. Are you a fiscally sponsored organization? The sponsor name. What is the EIN of the fiscal sponsor? Name of contact at your fiscal sponsor organization, so we can contact you. Email for contact, and your fiscal sponsorship MOU. General information includes your grant request description. So what are you requesting these funds for? The requested grant amount, that could be between $50,000 to $150,000. How much of the requested grant amount is an already incurred expense? You'll fill that in here. So if it happened, if the expense happened prior to today, you would input that number right here. And your DUNS number. So this is for applicants that are requesting more than $50,000. We'll go into our 6 highly impacted zip codes. So if you're serving residents that are in one of these zip codes, you'll go ahead and click that. If you're not, then you'll click not applicable. And you don't have to have both. You could have, you could either serve one of the following zip codes or one of the following populations. So please click if you're serving any of the following populations. This grant can provide funding for personal or non-personal services. So you'll click what you're applying for. And then it also asks what type of work you're requesting for. So is this outreach and education, case management services, health or mental health, legal assistance, or childcare? For non-personal services, if you're requesting for non-personal services, then you'll go ahead and click what that would tie to. So for example, if I need new laptops to help support our kids' distance learning programs, then I'll click that. And then it asks you to describe what your grant will be used for. Organization's mission and service provided to San Jose residents in the zip codes identified above. So we're asking for your mission and how does it align with the services that you're providing. What was your organization's annual operating budget in fiscal year 18-19 or the calendar year 2019? How many paid full-time staff do you currently employ? And how many paid part-time staff do you employ? Then we've also asked, has your organization had to reduce staff hours, furlough, or lay off any staff members? And then you'll get to include your project budget here. Let's see. And the last two questions, has your organization received federal funding related to coronavirus? Please let us know, yes or no. If yes, please describe any federal coronavirus funds that your organization already receives. Okay, because we're looking if there is a duplication of benefits right here. And then there's also a portion that has attachment links. Let's see. And in the attachment links, you'll be able to upload your budget. And then there's just a conflict of interest form.
So we tried to keep it really short and not terribly detailed, and make it as easy as possible on all of you, given the challenges. You know, we know you're all busy, we know this, and it's a really tight timeline. So thanks a lot, Miranda, for sharing that with everyone, and we will get those questions posted. So we've got a few more questions in the chat, and if I skipped one, the team is copying down your questions and we will add things to the FAQs. We did get a question around food bags and gift cards for food during harvest, Thanksgiving for families in need, and would that be allowed? And we are not funding those types of things through this program. This is really more about the program services, the personnel expenses, or the actual infrastructure needs that your nonprofit has related to the pandemic. So if you're doing, here's a question around the community outreach and education and personnel expenses. Does that include consulting costs for your outreach and education effort? Yes. If you hired a web designer to do a new website or design the website, skills you don't have in-house, that would be eligible. Okay. Outreach expenses, if they're your standard services and not something like a campaign. So outreach and education is really around a campaign type of or work that you're doing related to the COVID-19 pandemic or the pandemic-induced recession. If your outreach efforts are more like case management, where you're working one-on-one with clients, then we would recommend you check that case management box. But if it's a standard, like you do outreach around neighborhood safety or something that's not tied to the pandemic, then it's not an eligible program. Okay, so I see we've got some hands raised. So Nathan, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, thank you. Good evening. So a couple clarifying questions. So number one is that a lot of people have been asking about regarding programs, and I'm not sure that y'all clearly answered. So regarding programs, so the questions were either could I submit for more than one program, or is my web grant application inclusive of my organization that may have more than one program?
So if you're an agency with multiple arms, and you've got a seniors program in one area and you've got a mental health program in another area, and you're serving you're serving our at-risk populations, then it really depends on what's easiest for your agency. You can either do one big application and apply for up to 150, or you could do 2 applications for 75, but we will consider it as one agency grant, and the max any agency can apply for is 150. So.
Okay, so now for my question. My organization, we serve LGBTQ. That's our focus. That's who we serve. And we are working actually with various community folks to do a coronavirus and flu shot clinic, or yeah, we'll call it a clinic. So that would be an eligible activity since it's serving those that are in San Jose. Is that correct? Or
it potentially would be. But again, it's are you serving zip codes, populations, and then what bucket does it fall into? So this is not a really broad-based program. I mean, we have a limited amount of funds. So, we took to council these categories. And so if your program doesn't fit in these categories, and we're going to be looking for alignment to the categories that were approved by council. Okay. Yes, you can check multiple zip codes. If you are working in all 6 zip codes, please check all of them. And if you are serving multiple populations, if you're serving seniors who are Latinx, then check both boxes. So is the number of staff employed for the application pre-COVID or as of today? Put your staff as of today. If you've had staffing losses due to the pandemic-induced recession, check that box and use the narrative to say a year ago we had 20 staff, today we have 15. So we want to know how this pandemic has been hurting our nonprofits. Yes, it seems like it should be clear the program is applicable to clients in San Jose. Absolutely. We cannot spend a single dollar of this program on clients outside of San Jose. And yes, you can check both personnel and non-personnel. So if you have a program that is providing legal assistance and a portion of what you want to apply for is staffing, and then another portion of it is you needed all your staff to get new laptops to be able to do their services long distance, then that would be an eligible expense.
Mark Fischler has his hand raised.
Oh, yeah, Mark.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, or good evening already, 6 o'clock. I was messing around in the portal earlier today and noticed there were a lot of requests for attachments like bylaws, board members, audits, etc. Is that required for this application?
So those are just standard web grants applications. Unless it's starred, it's not required.
Thank you.
All right. We have a question from Jordan. Hi, Jordan. I haven't seen you in years. And it says, our clients are from a wide range of race and ethnicities and within the listed zip codes with a majority identifying as Hispanic. Could we check that box? Yeah, I think check your zip codes first and then check the applicable ethnicities that you're serving. And then we have another question about if you serve all of Santa Clara County, how does that impact? You're going to need to document how you are serving San Jose residents. I mean, I can't stress this enough. If your program is countywide, and we can't pay for services in Sunnyvale, Cupertino, Gilroy. We know the pandemic's been really bad in Gilroy too, but we can't use our coronavirus relief funds. The federal government will not let us.
Jennifer Smith has a question. Does it help if you include those unstarred supplemental materials? I think that's for inside the application. Jennifer and Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just going off of
Yes,
the starred.
that was a question that came just a second ago from the gentleman. And I'm wondering, you said you don't have to, but is it helpful?
You know, for this grant, we're probably not going to be looking as closely at those materials at this time, just given the quick turnaround, and we just want to make it easy for you guys. So unless it's required, and if it's required, that means it's a standard city requirement that we would need to ask for. But if it's not starred, it's not being asked for at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have clients who need legal assistance, but we don't provide it. If they qualify, can we use the funds to pay those legal fees? I would need to do a little bit more work on that. And it would really depend on the nature of your agency, Christine. So I think that's something, if you could follow up with an email, or that would be, we were really looking more at this being already part of what an agency's work would be. Does case management include eviction prevention counseling, even if we are not lawyers? Yeah, if you're providing case management to a family and that includes helping them not get evicted, that's something very important to us. So staff expenses, any staff expenses would only, so if you can document that 50% of your clients are in San Jose, or 50% of your programs are in San Jose, then you would need to proportionally show that 50% of that staff time. Or if you've got a case manager assigned to San Jose 100%, then that case manager's work could be 100%. I hope that's clear. All right, anyone else with the hand up?
Kathy, I see your question about the web grants. When first registering, you do have to add audits, bylaws, etc. I'm looking at the web grant right now and it doesn't have it starred. So I'm pretty sure you could continue to move forward with the application. It just asks for your email.
I'll unmute. I tried that and it wouldn't let me go any further. It kind of locks you out.
Okay.
I just add that without those things.
Yeah, I'll take your contact information and we'll follow up. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the grant applications went live yesterday, so you can access it now. Okay, and then Carol, can you save your grant application before submitting? Emily, Miranda, I believe the answer is yes, but.
Yes, you can.
You could save your application and edit anything before you click submit.
All right, Mark, I see your hands up. Do you have another question? Or is that from prior?
Sorry, I must have not taken it down.
Okay, no problem. All right, anyone else have questions? We really appreciate you all. I know this is a lot to digest. We are doing office hours. We are going to hold another one of these meetings. If you have a follow-up question, go ahead and email the email that we popped in the chat and that was in the COVID-19 SJCBO email. We'll post the recording on the city. So basically, the easy way to find it, to remember, is if you go to the city's homepage and click on the nonprofit resources page, then you'll be able to get to this. And then we are adding the chat questions to our FAQs. Please give us a little bit of time for staff to get those processed. Emily, just thank you for posting so it's COVID-19 SJ CBO at sanjoseca.gov. Okay, so few last questions. Can multiple people from the same agency work on the sample application with different logins? I don't know. Emily, Miranda.
You should be able to, but just make sure you're working on the same application and not creating a new one.
Okay, and then our organization helps other organizations in the listed zip codes to run their community outreach programs for the underserved community. Are our expenses eligible? That would really depend on how you're helping them and what it is. So it could be, so it might be something that would, it might be eligible, but I would really have to learn a little bit more about the program. So a good one to follow up with us. Let's see, what if we help serve crime victims and the crime occurred in San Jose, but the client is not a San Jose resident? I'm sorry, this money is designated for residents of San Jose. They need to be the beneficiaries. So office hours to be reserved ahead of time. Well, you're gonna have to reach out to us to get the Zoom link. So what we may end up doing if demand is really high is we may do them by categories. Like we may do breakout rooms where we have a breakout room to answer questions about non-personal versus personnel expenses or based on types of agencies. But we'd like to make it possible to do one-on-ones. Would a COVID information forum online be eligible? I'm just gonna say this again, guys. I wanna be really, really transparent and open with you. Online services are really hard for us to document that they are serving San Jose residents. We need to document that every dollar that we give you is helping San Jose residents. So an online forum could have people from all over the state or the world, unless you've got some magic way of doing it that limits it to San Jose residents. So those, all these great ideas you guys have are sound like really cool programs, but they're not going to be as easy for us to fund because of the documentation requirements. Okay, great tip from Carol, who apparently is a experienced web grants user, that you can get a link to your saved grant application and anyone with access to the link can work on it together. So great ability to do teamwork in your agencies. All right, any final last questions?
I have one last question. Sorry,
Yeah.
Hi. I'm looking at the very first page, and I don't want to jump the gun before I talk to everybody else. So if I were to enter like a quick one-sentence description of the project while I go and talk to everybody else, could I go back and edit it still, or is it saved for good?
Ooh, very good question.
I think just until you submit the application, you can go back and edit it.
Okay, even the project description part, which is separate, like before the next page of the actual full grant, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I just have a question. I know that with PPP, there was a limit, maximum number of employees that an organization could have in order to be eligible for the funding. Is that the case with this program or not?
No, there's no limits on the number of employees.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really focused on the programs and the eligible programs that have been defined by our city council, as well as the zip codes and the populations served. Those are our priorities.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Well, I really want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I know it was super short notice, and I want to give a shout out to some of our partners that you might have gotten the word from, like the Council of Nonprofits and some of the other folks that are help get the word out. We want to make this user friendly. We are going to try our best to be as available to you as possible. So you'll either, if you've got questions, you'll either hear back from me, Emily, Miranda, Clarissa, or Patrick. Those are the 5 members of our grant making team. Please be patient with us. We know the timeline's really tight for you guys, so we're going to try to make ourselves available to the best of our abilities. But again, we've had a lot of you on the call, so we know that your nonprofits have been really impacted hard by this pandemic and by the recession, and so we really want to do the best that we can to help all of you. And so we're trying to be really clear from the beginning about what we're going to fund, so that we don't waste your time chasing money that you wouldn't be eligible for. So with that, I appreciate the comment here. Another comment from Carol about identifying online clients in San Jose. That's great. Then that'll be, if you can document, then it makes it easier for us. Just keep in mind, it's really all about how can we do the documentation, so that down the road, if the federal government audits the city around this grant program, we're able to defend how we spent the money and we don't have to repay them. So I really appreciate you all turning out. It's probably a good time for everyone to take a break and go have some dinner, and then we're here for you if you have more questions. Thanks so much, everyone.